Hello and welcome to another review. So this review is for Involution Ocean by Bruce Sterling, and I really quite enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good and I don't have many complaints about it. It's got pros and cons, but I don't mind it at all. And that's almost a little bit surprising because Bruce Sterling is a very hit or miss author for me. I'm going to say that the hit-miss is approximately 50% and the miss rate is about 50%. It's like, I know that he's recognised, generally online at least, as one of the greats of cyberpunk. I don't see it. I definitely see William Gibson, but I've never really seen cyberpunk as Bruce Sterling. From what little I know of him, he hasn't written that many books, I don't believe. And in fact, against that is the fact that of all the books or anything of William Gibson, fiction, non-fiction, short stories, the only one of his that I didn't like, couldn't get into and didn't finish was The Difference Engine, in which he collaborated with Bruce Sterling. It bored the hell out of me. A nice little book that I got in my huge November book haul last year. It's a wraparound cover art, which I like. Ignore the bookmark. And it's in pretty good condition too, all things considered. At some point, someone decided it wasn't worth hanging on to, and it has been sold by St. Vincent de Paul's Books. There's a signature in it, but pretty good condition overall. Like, almost like it hadn't been read a whole lot. But I enjoyed it. Okay, so Involution Ocean, despite what the Wikipedia might tell you about it, isn't about a drug addict, really. Its main character is John Newhouse, and when the story opens, he talks to you directly. Come on, what do you want? He talks to you, the reader, directly, though I believe there's only one dear reader moment that the author falls into on page 104. This is Newhouse telling us his story, and sure, when it opens on the planet of Nullaqua, I think it is. The planet of Nullaqua. Why am I thinking that's a whale. Narwhal. Okay, Nullaqua. I think Nullarbor only with a qua. Nullaqua. Okay. So the main protagonist starts off in a huge share house on Nullaqua, in some particular city which I don't remember, and he is there because at that point he's using drugs, and he explains it very rationally and very much like a younger person would. It's like he takes drugs and alcohol or whatever to ease certain feelings that he doesn't like. At this point, at one point in his life, he discovered his favourite drug, which is made somehow from the whales of Nullaqua. It's got a fashionable druggish type name, like, is it Sharp? It's not Sharp. It's Quell. Sharp. Something like that. One of those. Flare. That's it. It's Flare. He likes using Flare, which is made somehow from the oil or the guts of the whales of Nullaqua. And in pursuit of this, he very realistically says he came to Nullaqua. He's living in this building in which all of the individual characters, the only thing they really share is the same aficionado attitude towards this drug, which at that point isn't illegal on the planet. And he describes all the characters that are living in this house with some intent, and it made me think that I might need to know who they were, and I didn't. After they've been told to you, then you might as well forget them, because for all intents and purposes they aren't part of this book any longer, though they are part of the reason why John ends up on a ship sailing out as a cook and deckhand, no, just as a cook on this particular ship, which is going out for 6 months. They go out for 6 months at a time to hunt these whales. Flash, damn, I've already forgotten its name. The name of this drug, whatever it is, Flare. Flare has just been made illegal on the planet as well, and so the only way they can get more of it is if one of them goes out on a whaling ship and gets it for themselves. You're right, there are problems with this plot setup, many of them, but we'll ignore those for the time being. Now, the really exciting thing about this book, the really unique and interesting thing about this book, aside from the fact that it's all narrated directly by John Newhouse, and it's very sharp, surprisingly consistent, straightforward, and interesting narration. That's surprising for a couple of reasons. A, this is, I believe, Bruce Sterling's first novel. I believe it started as a short story, and Harlan Ellison asked him to expand it for the novel, and he did, and now it's a novel. So it's his first novel, and it's pretty impressive for a first novel from a relatively young writer. The other thing is, John Newhouse keeps saying that he's an addict. Now, I've known a few people who were. I've read a lot about them, including Diary of an Opium Eater. The one notorious thing about addicts is that they have no attention and virtually no intellectual curiosity for anything except the drug. So John Newhouse doesn't really come across as a particularly likely or intentional addict, which is, I mean, leaving that aside. Aside from that, and I don't mind that, not a problem. I wasn't looking for another Diary of an Opium Eater anyway. Aside from all of that, the really exciting thing about this is the planet Nullaqua. Nullaqua is described as a huge planet with no atmosphere at all, except in this one crater. This one crater is said to be, I think it was 500 meters in size, and so deep, but it's not all that deep, but it's so deep that it's actually got atmosphere on the inside of the crater. That's where the cities are, and that's where this ocean, where the whales and many other creatures exist. What it doesn't have is water. That's right, you've got an ocean without water. This particular ocean is made up of dust. So that's unique, and possibly defying all the laws of physics and everything else. But if you can suspend your disbelief, it's a very, very intriguing and entertaining story. There's a whole heap of things that he writes that make it feel very oceanic. But every now and then he'll throw in the dust, and because the dust is so abrasive, everyone working on these ships needs to wear a mask that keeps their mucous membranes safe from the dust, including the eyes, the mouth, the nostrils. So they can't actually speak to each other when they're in masks. The captain and the people in charge have got microphones, but the general crew members don't. This is also a planet without general water, so there's no timber. It's all metal and plastics. There's enough that's really unique about this whole thing that means that while I was reading it, I felt no need to nitpick the details. And the thing is, there are a lot of details that could be quite badly nitpicked. But you're either going to be able to accept the whole central notion of it all and enjoy that, or you're not. If you can, I think you're in for a really good read. It's a lot of fun. It's enjoyable. Some random commenter who reviewed it said that Sterling's plot and world hang together in a believable fashion if you ignore science. And yeah, they're not wrong. I can't think of any way in which a crater a couple of miles deep is going to hang on to atmosphere that isn't present anywhere else on the planet. There's the notion of the way he treats the dust ocean by ships travelling on it and animals living in it and whales diving in it and sharks and anemones and all the rest of it. As long as you're reading these things, it feels as if you've got an ocean environment, and you're pulled out of that when he mentions it's all made of dust. Now, I'm imagining his dust ocean a bit like bull dust on the Nullarbor Plain, where it's so soft it's practically like talcum powder. But even so, this is science fiction where the science is not. But it's very much a personal adventure. The sort of personal adventure that makes me think that Bruce Sterling, when he was young, read a lot of Jules Verne. I am looking at you, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. There's often a very 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea type feel. And apparently the original story that he wrote, I believe for a convention, was called Moby Dust. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that Moby Dick was something he read as well. One of the things I really liked right from the beginning was the clarity of our narrator, John Newhouse, as he's talking to you, the reader. And one of the things that he did in the very first chapter early on that I really enjoyed was the way he states that personality evolves and changes, and the person who is writing this story down now is so different from the person who experienced it, practically different. And I like that drawing of your attention to the fact, and I think maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but I feel like it's a misdirection, because the Bruce Sterling who wrote this is almost certainly not the Bruce Sterling that he was by the time it was published. It took a couple of years. It's definitely not the Bruce Sterling that existed 10 years later. And by saying this about himself, our narrator, John Newhouse, is clearing himself, if you will, of all the errors of judgment that he has during the episode. And honestly, there's not that many of them. What else? And aside from that one dear reader on page 104, I think Sterling very much walks that line of a narrator talking to you directly, but without, what is it they call it? The fifth wall, the glass wall, the whatever being shattered. You never really feel that it's anything but a story you're being told. I like that. So there's a lot more for me to like than not like in that book. Though, even though it's a thin book, it's surprisingly dense in terms of reading experience. At 172 pages, you'd think you'd fly through it. And parts of it you could. But in other parts, it's very full of information. And while it's very readable, there's a lot to absorb. So it wasn't a fast book to read by any means. The things that I didn't like. Though the writing and the narration is very clear, it's very straight to the point, it's usually very nice, it can be choppy. That descent into the Dear Reader style, there's a few other times when the characters chop and change a little bit for no reason, when the main character does things that are nonsensical and which are not explained in any context by this future narrator who's telling us what happened to the earlier narrator. And I think they should have been. There is a stage towards the end, after John has been in dire straits, where he comes to the surface of the dust, and Bruce gives us an amazing description of nitrogen narcosis and the bends. I'm a scuba diver. I hear about nitrogen narcosis a lot. I've mostly managed to avoid the bends. I've personally managed to avoid the bends. Among my friendship circle, we've mostly managed to avoid the bends. I've got to say that Bruce's description of it was quite wonderful. The only thing, it was so wonderful that it brought me back into the reality, because John's just come out of a pile of dust, and a pile of dust is not going to act the same as water. It's just not. So that pulled me out of it a bit. But the writing, if you can subsume your common sense that tells you that a pile of dust isn't going to behave the same as an ocean, then this ocean is really, really well done. With its animals, with its tides, with its weird oddities. I mean, the ecology that Bruce has imagined for this is just wonderful. Between the whales and the sharks and these weird crab-like creatures that live on what sound like kind of lily pads. He talks about diatoms and plankton. Of course, all of these animals rely on water, and that's a whole different story, and we don't get into that too too much. That's one of the ways in which you seriously need to suspend all scientific disbelief in order to read this book. I guess the only thing I really absolutely didn't enjoy by the end of the book about the writing style was that John and Newhouse managed to get on board one particular ship. Of all the whaling ships out of them, almost all of them are owned and run by Nullaqua natives. Nullaqua. Oh God, I'm an idiot. I just got it. Null Aqua, no water. Oh. Should I delete this? No, you might as well know I'm an idiot. Null Aqua, no water planet. Unbelievable. Oh, that was embarrassing. Yes. All the other boats that are being run, whaling, are run by Null Aqua natives. Only one is being run by a man who has come from overseas. And this captain is a bit cray-cray. Most of his crew are Nullaqua experienced deckhands, but he does have one other alien on board. The alien is the love interest and the weird story. The fact that someone at the age of 20 can create such a character is really impressive. So the captain's name is Desperadum, though he hints that isn't his original name. And he's old. The alien that John ends up falling in something with is Delusa. She's got a weird story. She comes from a planet where she didn't fit in, and she left it and got a lot of plastic surgery or surgical techniques are described as being very common throughout the galaxy, and she apparently got enough to make her look kind of more like human. So she's got human-like elements, such as her legs look human. They're very light, like hawk. She also has bat wings. She's been surgically enhanced to look like a beautiful woman, but the chemistry, I guess, of her native planet is so different that she can't actually touch John or have him touch her without breaking out in rash and ulcerating, suppurating sores. As you can imagine, there's not a lot of what the kids call spice in this book. Yeah, not much of sex. It's more a very, very unequal and unbelievable love story, which was quite entertaining, if odd. Anyway, where was I? Oh, I was going to start to tell you. John managed to get on this boat, captained by this particular captain, who's okay with aliens. Desperadum took him on board, but he also took on a second person. The second person turned up at the druggy share house just as they were learning that their drug of choice had become illegal on the planet. And he decided to go out with John onto this boat. Why John would agree with that when several boats turned him away, because he was accompanied by this joker, I don't know. Why he continues to maintain a link with him, again, never explained, and that one should have been. He doesn't know this guy, he's obviously not trustworthy, blah, yada, yada, yada. But Captain Desperado takes them on board. So John spends his whole time cooking, and he's a little bit removed from the crew, and that actually gives us a really good perspective on the boat and how it operates, what the crew do, the whole whaling scenario. He sets up a little distillery to distill the whale bits into the drug thereafter, and this drug does actually become a fairly major part of the plot. There was a point to me talking about how he got on the ship, but I've now forgotten it. Oh yes, Desperado, that was it. Captain Desperado. Desperadum. Captain Desperadum. So, toward the end of the book, this gets more and more cute, but John is taken into Desperadum's confidence. Desperadum isn't really interested in the whaling, he's interested in the scientific discovery of the whales and the animals that live in the ocean and all that sort of thing. And John makes a comment about the scientific, apparently there's one particular scientific academy, and Desperadum has a little ranty McRant pants about how it takes 300 years to get a degree. And I took that seriously because apparently in this galaxy, rejuvenating treatments are common, and people basically start to die when they get sick of having the rejuvenation treatments. So it might well be that it takes 300 years to get a science degree. It sounds kind of like heaven to me, but you know, each to their own. Throughout this book, John keeps making remarks about Desperadum's memory, which is failing, as is common in older people, and then mild schizophrenia, as is common in older people. It's like, as is common in older people, just keeps on happening. It's like warts are common in older people, bad memory is common in older people, a bit paranoid, common in older people. Everything is common in older people. And in that, as in no other way, does this book feel like it was written by someone still in their teens or barely out of. However, if you can cope with that very minor aggravation, and it only started to aggravate me, I've got to tell you, in the last 30 pages or so, when it's like, you're reaching here. This isn't an older person. This is someone who's batshit crazy. Maybe don't do what he wants you to. Maybe. Anyway, he does. He survives. It's a great book. I recommend you read it. The reason you can read it in this particular format is Harlan Ellison. Harlan Ellison wrote the introduction, and he raves on about how much he loved Sterling. Real bromance by the sound of it. And this book is part of a series that Ellison was apparently doing, and he makes you work for it. You have to read the whole introduction before he says that it is part of a series. And I want to mention the series because I know there's a few booktubers out there who like reading complete series in science fiction. Now, Involution Ocean, blah 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 blah. Bruce, if you'll rewrite and expand this story to 6,000 words and change that moronic title, he did call it Moby Dust to begin with, I'd be very honoured to publish this as one of the Harlan Ellison Discovery series. So this book is brought to you by the Harlan Ellison Discovery series, and it's a good one. Harlan Ellison has a lot to say about it. To be honest, I found the Harlan Ellison introduction a bit harder to read than the whole book. Harlan Ellison can take me that way. Great book. I've rabbited on way too long about it though, so thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you feel like it, or don't if you don't. Read good books, and thank you for watching.